Hello everyone, my name is Mrs Ingram and I am an Associate Assistant Principal at Harris Academy Rainham. This video should give you an insight into how we assess our pupils here at KS3. That includes Year 7, 8 and 9, and it will also give you an understanding the reports that we send home to you at the end of each term, and it will help you also understand what ways in which you can help your children better. You're going to hear from me and Mr Burford, who is our Vice Principal, and you're also going to hear from Ms Koyaz, who's our Head of Year 7, and she's going to talk to you about kind of revision techniques and the support that you can be giving to your children at home as well. So the first thing I wanted to speak with you about is kind of the rationale behind the assessment process that we have here. And as an academy, we've spent a long time looking at our curriculum and what is being taught to pupils in different subject areas. And we have designed and created these really thoughtful curriculum plans. And at the centre of these curriculum plans is this idea of powerful knowledge. And so therefore, it made sense to us that at the centre of our assessment strategy has to be how we can measure what is taught and what our pupils are retaining over time. And it's really important for us that this testing process that we have here at Rainham is not just about assessment, and that it actually informs our teachers here and improves the learning within the classroom. So they should be informing teachers and heads of departments about the learning that has taken place and then adapting the lessons moving forward to help ensure that we close those gaps within pupils' knowledge. And every school tests pupils in different ways. And so therefore I wanted to show you kind of the influences and the research that lies behind our assessment process. And because we have tailored it so specifically to what the vision here we have at Rainham and kind of our curriculum intent as well. And so we have decided that creating low-stake quizzes is the best way in which we can assess pupils' knowledge over time. And these are carefully designed multiple-choice questions. And it's really important to note that subjects are not comparable. So if your child receives 60% in geography and 70% in maths, that does not necessarily mean that they are better in maths than they are in geography. As the knowledge tests are different within subject areas and they are different between knowledge tests as well. And it's really important to also note that the purpose of these knowledge tests is not to predict GCSE grades. So that is not a piece of information that comes from these tests. The whole point of this data is to allow us to be able to quantify how much knowledge has been retained and then use that information to adjust our curriculum and our teaching moving forward. And so then how do we create these knowledge tests? They're really thoughtfully designed out knowledge tests, and they are based on the knowledge that has been taught. After the knowledge tests have taken place, our departments will review the results and see what aspects of knowledge pupils have not retained. And then this will inform our curriculum plans moving forward, and lessons will be used to address the gaps within the learning that has taken place. So this is an example of a knowledge test, and this is one of our Geography Year 8 knowledge tests. And as you can see, there are 30 multiple choice questions, and there are 4 possible answers in which a pupil can select. And I'm going to talk you through in a moment how we ensure that the rigour and challenges remained in a multiple choice question. And also I will talk to you about kind of best ways in which we can help pupils So here is an example of one of our knowledge tests. This is a Year 8 Geography knowledge test, and as you can see, there are 30 multiple choice questions here, and there are 4 possible answers that pupils will select. And I'll talk you through in a moment kind of the makeup of a multiple choice question and how we can make sure the rigour and challenges remained when creating and designing these tests. In addition to knowledge tests, we also like to test pupils' skills and obviously their writing abilities as well. And this is what happens in the section 2 of these knowledge tests. And this is again an example from geography that your child might experience. So then how do we create these knowledge tests? And it's really important that our multiple choice questions are retaining the rigour of any other assessment process that might happen. And therefore a lot of research went into understanding how to design thoughtful multiple choice questions. And a multiple choice question contains of two parts. You have the stem, which is the question itself, and then you have the answers and a set of alternatives. So as you can see here on the right hand side of the screen, you have your stem, which is the question here, and then you have your correct answer, and then you have 3 possible plausible distractors, but not necessarily incorrect, but not accurate. And there are different ways in which we help create a stem, which is the question. So when possible, the stem should be a direct question rather than an incomplete statement. For example, stem should be how are alloys ordinarily produced, rather than a finish the sentence off question. This makes sure the rigour is maintained within a multiple choice question. And the question itself should be explicit. It should be really definite and a singular question, because the purpose here is to test the knowledge of the pupils. So for example, what is the study of science of the mind and behaviour, rather than psychology ... They should eliminate any excess irrelevant information, and it should be solely focused on the knowledge. And they should avoid using negative wording, and they should be phrased in a positive way. So for example, undesirable stem would be which of the following is not cited, whereas something desirable would be which is cited as an accomplishment. Now, the alternative is what we would classify as the answers. And it's really important to make sure the plausible distractors are attractive to the pupil that might have less knowledge. And so therefore it can't be an obvious incorrect answer. So for example, which philosophy used a watch to argue the mystery and complexity of the universe shows that there is a designer? Now, number C, Mr. Stanley, is not a philosopher and is our principal, and therefore it's really easy for pupils to already discount number C. But what is desirable is having a list of philosophers here, okay, that could be the answer. However, the answer is A, it is William Paley, but pupils have also learnt about B, C and D, and therefore they are plausible distractors. So how do we do that? How do we understand kind of what would be a plausible distractor and what wouldn't? Specialists, so our heads of departments, would mimic students' problem-solving processes by answering questions like what is the misconception or what is a common error for solving this problem? And therefore, what is it that confuses pupils the most? And therefore, that helps us design what a plausible distractor would be, because the pupil that knows their knowledge would be able to understand what is correct and incorrect. A pupil that might not necessarily know the knowledge would struggle more to differentiate between the correct and incorrect answers. Now, these alternatives should be equal in length. So we can't make it easy for pupils to be able to pick the correct answer based on the language or the grammar behind them. So for example, undesirable, these 4 examples here are all different lengths, whereas desirable ones need to have all the same length in which to make it a better plausible distractor. Eliminate any irrelevant information from the alternative. Okay, so undesirable, you've got words in here that are not necessary because we are solely focusing on the knowledge itself. And that's what's important in these assessments. Now, lastly, we include what we would know as a confidence score. Okay, and pupils would rate how confident they are when answering a question. And this is all based on this idea of a hypercorrection effect. And this is all based on the research that we've done so far. And this will help pupils tackle any misconceptions that they have. And what we ask pupils to do is rate numbers 1 to 4 in this section here. If they are fully confident that they have given the correct answer, they make it as number 1. And if they're not sure whether this is the correct answer, they would mark it as number 4. Now, this concept of the hypercorrection effect it refers to the findings that errors are committed with high confidence need quick intervention to correct than low confidence errors that are more likely to occur. So it's really important for us as teachers to be able to identify whether a pupil has completely misunderstood the knowledge and are really confident with it, or whether they are low confident with the knowledge and kind of that is the reason why they've got the answer correct. Okay, that is everything from me, and I'm going to pass you over to our Vice Principal, Mr. Burford, who's going to go through the reporting process for you.
Hello, my name is Sean Burford and I'm Vice Principal at Harris Academy Rainham. I'd just like to spend a few minutes talking you through our academic report and how to get the best from them. With any school reporting system there is a tension. There is this trade-off between us trying to provide you with as much information as we can so you can have a real sense of how your child is doing in school, but also keeping that report as clear and as simple and concise as possible. And those two principles will often conflict with each other. The more information that we provide you can make the report more difficult to understand, and conversely, if we attempt to try and keep the report as simple as we can, the risk is we wouldn't give you enough information to see your child's progress. So this evening is designed to help explain how our report works and what you can do to interpret it and get the most from it. It is very difficult to make accurate predictions from ongoing assessments around what terminal GCSE grades are likely. So the further from year 11 a child is, being able to make those predictions on GCSE style grades is very, very difficult. The margin of error is actually quite large. For a year 7 child, for example, who has been with us for 4 months, accurately predicting what they'll get at the end of the year 11 presents a lot of challenges. So as part of our reporting system, we don't talk about GCSE grades particularly. It's also important to consider that learning isn't linear. You don't learn an equal amount each week or each term or each year. You don't learn an equal amount in each subject, and some learning can take a really difficult content can take a really long time to master. So when looking at these reports, it's important to bear that in mind, that your child may not have done as well this term as last time. That doesn't necessarily mean there's a problem, but they may be encountering some challenging content. And it's also very important to remember that you can appear to get worse as well as improve along the journey. Depending on the content that's being delivered, your child may have had exposure to a particular topic at primary school and done particularly well, whereas the next topic is something new to them that they found more difficult. On a report it would look like they've done very well and then got worse, but it doesn't really reflect the journey that they're on and the content that they're wrestling with. So when reviewing reports, it's important to keep that in mind. And I know you may have experienced something called a flight path. It's something that is talked about sometimes with secondary school assessments, and for us a flight path makes no sense. A flight path is this idea that you can plot a straight line on a graph over time, and that a child will make equal amounts of progress at each point of assessment all the way up to year 11. And so by creating this flight path, you can then see what they're likely to get in year 11 and work backwards and then suggest whether they're on track or not. That just does not make sense. If learning isn't linear, plotting it on a graph over 5 years is a very challenging thing to do, and something as a school we won't do. So what we will talk to you around is about retained knowledge, how much of the content that they've been delivered in Key Stage 3 that they have remembered, and that they can then reproduce in questions and answers in the style that my colleague talked about earlier. So the way we build our report, rather than any kind of flight path, we try very hard not to work in GCSE style grades. We try and give you a sense of comparison. So we try and show you how well your child has done in each subject compared to other children in their year group at our school. So with that information should give you an idea of if they're doing particularly well or where they've got some challenges. And during the year we will talk around that as a knowledge test percentage, and we won't work in GCSE style grades. We will only refer to those with you at the end of the year after a formal exam style assessment has been completed, and with that we actually use the data from all the Harris schools who all sit the same assessment to calculate a prediction of GCSE grade. Using all of the schools within the Harris Federation, it gives us a much larger data set to work from, and that enables us to make a prediction which is much closer than we would be able to do with just 180 children in our school. So throughout the year we won't refer to them, but we will give you an indicator at the end of the year. But it is important again to point out that this is a prediction. This is what we feel they are likely to get looking at all of the data that we have available, but it may be better or worse than the reality, and the further from year 11 they are, the larger that margin of error will be. In terms of our report, so we send a report out 3 times. We send it at the end of each full term. So you will receive it by post and by My Child at School at the end of the Christmas term, at the end of the spring term, so at the start of Easter, and then before we break up for the summer too. And each time we send you the report, it's the same document, but we update it at each window. So for the Christmas one you have already received, there will be space for the spring and summer results, and then we will update that and resend it to you at each time. So the document will grow over the course of the year. And this is what it looks like. So on first glance it can look a little bit confusing, and what I'm going to attempt to do is break it down and explain each part of the report. So along the top here is where you'll see general information about the child. So you'll obviously see their name and their learning guide group. You'll have attendance information, which is color coded. So where it is green, we're very happy with their attendance, through to yellow, orange, and then red where there are significant concerns. And then there's the average effort score as well, which is similarly color coded. So for the effort score, all teachers of your child will give a score between 1 and 4 for how much effort they feel your child is putting into their subject lessons, and then we aggregate those scores and give you an average. The descriptors are on the back of the report for you to read, and as I say, they're color coded, and they're color coded compared to the year group. So we're breaking it down into quintiles to color it. You also have Broncon points that your child has achieved and the average for the year group. So again, you can see whether they are achieving more or less than other students in their year. And the top part is pretty straightforward. The bottom half of the report is reserved for how your child has done in each subject. For each one there is an expected GCSE grade column. So we use information provided from primary schools and information from baseline assessments when they join us in year 7 to produce us a figure, which we then use with data from all of the Harris schools, both for this year but also historically, and we calculate what we feel a child of that ability profile should achieve at the end of year 11 without any disruption to their education. So this assumes that they'll have very high levels of attendance, that they won't experience any trauma throughout the years, or any breaks in learning or difficulties with school, providing that they are the typical child, if you like. That's how we feel they will achieve at the end of the year. Where there are issues and challenges, obviously that may not be the final grade, but it's what we'll be expecting of them. It's also a minimum expected, so a child is encouraged to do better than that, but we don't refer to targets or anything. There is no glass ceiling, if you like, of achievement. That's just where we feel they should be. They're or higher would be better. The second column is reserved for the percentage of the knowledge test that the child scored in each subject. Now, on its own, this piece of information isn't that useful. This is just the raw score from the test. Also, tests from different terms may be higher or lower, and that's not necessarily a good or a bad thing because it reflects the difficulty of that test. So where they say it's a particularly challenging knowledge test in say autumn, the score might be very low, but everyone scores very low. What we're looking at is who's performed the best in that test. If in spring they then sit an easier assessment, it's quite likely that the score will be a lot higher, and that's fine. What we're looking for is performance within the cohort, but the score is there so you can see how well they've performed. And then the last two columns here are referring to performance. So what we do is we compare the child's score on that knowledge test for that subject against everyone else in the cohort, so the entire year group, and then we quintile and color code it. So it gives you an idea of comparative performance, so how your child has done compared to the other 180 children in your year group, and it's all color coded, blue being the best, and then it goes through green, yellow, orange, and then red, where it would be in the bottom 20%. If we look at these two here as an example, you can see this child scored 77% in their citizenship knowledge test, which would put them in the top 20% of pupils in their year group. So they've performed very well in that assessment. But for science, they had a score of 35 for the science knowledge test, which would put them in the lowest 40% of students in their year group. So although it's not the worst score for them, it's obviously concerning, and it's highlighting that there's maybe an issue in science. The column next to it is a similar idea, but it compares the knowledge test percentage with performance of pupils of similar ability. So we look at children who have got a similar kind of ability profile from primary school and baseline assessments and compare their score to those children. And then again we quintile it with the same colouring system. So using these two as an example again, we have this child's citizenship score, as well as being in the highest 20% for the cohort, they're also in the highest 20% for similar pupils. So again, reinforcing they've done incredibly well here. Whereas for science, although they were in the bottom 40% for the cohort, when compared to children of similar ability profiles, they actually found themselves in the lowest 20%. And as obviously there's a concern in science here, where you as parents, it's flagged for you, and us as a school will then go and start investigating why that's happened, because it's not the same in other subjects. They've done a lot better elsewhere. And then finally, at the very end of the report, there is a column where we put the end of year assessment. So we will hold a formal mock exam process with GCSE style exam papers over 2 weeks. The papers are designed by the Harris Federation with use of their consultants and our heads of department, and the papers are then confirmed across all centres, and all schools will sit the same papers with the same mark schemes. And what that enables us to do is to do some statistical analysis of that child's performance, not across a school, but across the 20-odd secondary schools that the Harris Federation have. And using that much larger set of data allows us to give a prediction of likely performance at GCSE. So this final column will be shown as a GCSE style grade, because we've been able to produce an analysis of a much more reliable than what you can do with just a single school. And again, we'll report it to you, but it is a prediction. It is possible that in year 8, for example, that grade may be lower if they have performed worse, but again, it's there as an indicator, along with the knowledge test performance, of how well they are doing within each subject within the school. And then we will update this report 3 times throughout the year. So this is complete for autumn, but the space you can see there will be filled in once we get to the spring. So the information will be side by side, and then finally the summer and end of year assessment will complete the report, and then you'll have this full picture of performance across the year, measuring retained knowledge, which is the purpose of our knowledge test, and then an end of year assessment to give you a GCSE style indicated grade of performance. I hope that's been helpful. I hope that explains a little bit better how the knowledge tests and the assessment process works, and I'll pass you on to my colleague, Ms. Corres.
Hi, I'm Miss Goyes and I'm Head of Year 7. I'm going to speak to you about how best to help your child study, some things that you can do at home to really help them with finding an environment and getting the right frame of mind for them to do their studying and learning at home. Firstly, parents are the main influence on learning, but the pressures at home are great. We understand this. The best way to help your child is to demonstrate your value of education. It's one of the most important ways a parent can encourage their learning. But the pressures on children at home are great. Research shows by far the most important factor predicting anxiety and depression in children is low quality of relationships with their parents. So that connection time with parents is so important for them. Following this, lack of structure to the day, separating time for leisure or fun, and high levels of distraction or inability to focus on schoolwork are also very important factors affecting their learning. So I'm going to go through some top tips for parents on home learning from a pastoral point of view. I support your children at school pastorally, so making sure that they're happy and putting things in place day to day to make them feel comfortable and in an environment where they feel like they can learn and do their best. The internet features great material advising parents what to do, and coming up is a guide to it all. Another good place to start is asking your child themselves what could help them with their learning. The children themselves have the best insight into the benefits and challenges of what they're going to find good or bad when doing their learning at home. Coming up is learning space, daily schedule, predictable routine, goals and progress, managing frustrations, and closeness and connections. These are all things that I focus on at school and embedding into their daily routines at school to try and make their lives at school and the environment at school the most able for them to learn in their best way. Firstly, their learning space. So find a space in your home that can be used for everyday learning. They might have one of these already, and if so, that's great. If the space is shared, create some kind of separation to minimise the noise and distractions. You could offer your child the chance to decorate this space and make it their own. If they feel like they've got ownership over it, they're more likely to use it and they're more likely to get a benefit out of it. Make sure the space includes essentials for their learning, so workbooks, stationery, perhaps if you've got IT for them at home, they can use that to do their Hegarty Maths, to do their Bedrock, Access Show My Homework, etc. There's loads of workbooks on the market at the moment, and we obviously can provide things and guidance at school as well. If you've got any queries about what's best to help your child at home with their learning for a particular subject, the best place to go is their teacher for that subject. You'll be able to find out what's best for them, what guides and what workbooks that you can purchase or use online to help them with their learning at home. The second thing is their daily schedule. So understand what teachers expect from your child. So again, contacting your child's teacher for their specific subject is going to be key here. You can do that by email, and all of our emails are the same. So once you get your child's teacher's name, you can get that from their timetable, or you can ask your child. You'll be able to work out what their email will be, or you can always contact me or Mrs. Ingram or Mr. Burford, and we'll happily give you the correct email address. You can check Satchel 1, Hegarty Maths, Bedrock, Contact their teachers, obviously I've said. Have set days and times for homework, reading, extracurricular activities. So having this schedule is really important, and if the child knows what's coming up, they're more likely to be brought into it and be able to do it successfully. Next is having a predictable routine, quite similar to the previous, but more about what they are doing on a daily basis. So review your daily schedule and make sure the child understands it. So if you decide that on a Tuesday they're going to go to club after school, then make sure the child knows that this day they're going to do a sports club, for example, and they might not have time to do their homework when they get home. So then that will be a different night, and really just go through it with them. Speak to them about it. What do you want to do each night? How much time do you want to spend on this? If they feel like they've got some control over it, then it's definitely going to help them take part and buy into the routine a lot more. So, for example, first, if you do 30 minutes of reading, then they can do something that they want to do. So they could play their video game, for example. So using that kind of bargaining, if they know that they've done this amount of whatever their schoolwork is, and then they get to choose something that they want to do, again, that's going to be a lot easier and a lot more valuable for them. Being consistent will help your child become independent. If every week is the same routine, it will eventually become habitual. So again, at school, we have the routine every single day, which is the same. And we really try and create a culture and a habit and norms that your child can follow, and they just know what's going to happen next. It helps them to feel safe. It helps them to feel that they know exactly what is coming up and there are no surprises for them. Keep daily activities regular, for example, dinner time, bedtime, etc. Hopefully most of the children have this anyway, but it really helps them, makes their days consistent. It ensures they're getting similar amounts of sleep each night. Again, they know what's coming up, they know what's happening. Progress and goals. And this is really something to focus on, because every single small step is the way to making their overall goal and their overall big achievement. So together with your child, set behavioural expectations and review them daily. So we do this every day at school. The students know their expectations for their behaviour, and if they're not meeting those expectations, then we speak to them about it. Set goals and timelines that your child can complete. So instead of just saying, oh, it's reading time, go and do some reading, give them a goal. Give them every day how much reading they're going to do. Maybe it's a certain number of pages or a chapter, or how much you're going to have read by the end of this week. It's all about the progress and not perfection. So they think about the process of it rather than the outcome. Teach your child to use a timer to stay focused for a period of time and start small. So they have a whole day of concentrating at school. When they get home, they want to relax, and it is going to be harder for you at home, of course. So having periods of time where they know if they concentrate for 15 minutes or so, and then they've got a break, then hopefully that will encourage them to be able to concentrate for slightly longer, and then a little bit longer and a little bit longer. So it will build up that concentration and focus time over a period of time, rather than just saying, right, we need to do all of our homework tonight and you've got to sit down and do it for, 2 hours. It's never going to be a quality amount of work that gets done if they have to sit there for 2 hours and do something. And if they are making great progress, then mark the progress with something. So sticker, pennies, pebble, just anything kind of tangible so they can see the progress they're making. And use your child's favourite activities as a reward to show them the effort and progress that they're making. So as you can see on the right hand side, you've got like a staircase and the goal at the top. Every single step is a goal. It's small, but it could take them a few days to make a step. And their overall goal might be over a couple of months or a month or however long, but that's a long-term goal. But they need to understand that every day they are making progress and they are achieving. And if they looked back over a long period of time, they would look back and think, oh wow, actually I have made so much progress. I've been talking to the kids about this a lot recently in PE. So I'm a PE teacher. I've started badminton with the Year 7 girls, and at the moment it's right at the beginning, our first lesson. And badminton is one of those things that first off, they're going to find it quite hard. And I've said to them, you need to think in 6 weeks' time when we come to the end of badminton, that's going to be when I'm going to ask you to look back at your first lesson and remember how hard you were finding it then. And then look at you now and see how much progress you've made. And that's going to be a really lovely thing for them, and I'm really excited to be able to do that with them so they can actually see that progress. Next up is managing frustrations. Now this is never easy, and there's never going to be a simple solution to this or a one size fits all. And obviously we have to do this at school all of the time with lots of students. So use simple calming strategies, counting to 10, deep breaths, having a short break. Don't underestimate breathing techniques. We use them a lot at school and they are really beneficial and they do help the children, I think. They make them feel more in control, and I think that's something that really helps. Help your child describe the problem and express their feelings. A lot of the time they'll shut up their feelings and they won't want to explain what's wrong. But if you have a conversation with them and just try to talk it out without getting angry and frustrated yourself, most of the time you're going to get the answer that you want and come up with a solution together. So this adds to your connections and it makes you feel like you found a solution and you fixed the problem together. So it just kind of links back to those previous expectations, and it makes you feel like a team and that you're working together and you're moving forward together. Explain how the child's behaviour is linked to consequences and have gentle reminders with firm limits. Now, this is a really big issue that a lot of the children are having at school at the moment, is they'll do something and they won't think of the consequence of their action. So then they won't complete their homework, or they won't do something, or they'll say something a certain way to someone and they won't think, actually, what are the consequences of my actions? And we really need to try and instill that into them, because it's such an important life skill to be able to think, actually, what is the outcome if I do this? And lastly is closeness and connection. So this part is really important. Start the day with something fun. Create opportunities for your child to be helpful around the house. So helping others is going to be a really nice thing for the family, make everybody feel a bit happier, a bit nicer. Each day try to connect with your child without any distractions. So obviously time is a factor here and life gets in the way and you've all got very busy lives, busy households. But even if this can be done once a week where you do something together, it will be really beneficial. Create opportunities for your child to share their worries and provide reassurance. So I've hit you with a lot of stuff there, and hopefully even if a lot of it you might already be doing, but there might be one or two things which help. And like I said, this is more of a pastoral level. It's not so much about the science of learning or revision techniques at the moment. We will do something on that in the future, but I wanted, because obviously the kind of time that we are at the moment and the amount of time that the students have missed of school and their social skills, I felt like the pastoral kind of approach was quite an appropriate one. So I hope that you've taken maybe a couple of things from that which you might want to try at home, and thank you very much for listening. Some key contacts before I go are my email address and Mrs. Ingram's email address, which are on the screen now. If you want to contact any of your children's teachers at all, just drop us an email. We're more than happy to answer any of your queries, forward your email on to any specific people for you to contact them. And again, thank you for listening, and hopefully I'll see you soon in person.